For over 100 years, the government has consistently released a monthly jobs report. It's the key indicator on our economic health. Are we creating jobs in this country? Do we have more jobs this month than last month? What about the pay, the wages? Is there wage growth? Or are we losing money every paycheck? That is what's in this report. The report's been delayed in the past for good reason, but they simply have never not released it until now. We heard from the White House press secretary yesterday that the October report may never come out. Why? Because of the government shutdown. How is that possible? In the 2019 government shutdown, the report still came out. Look at COVID, chaotic time, a lot of turmoil, a lot of confusion. The report was delayed, but it still came out. Government shutdowns do not make the jobs report disappear. The data doesn't vanish. You can work on it. We have people there this week. We can work on it, but they don't want to. So the report comes out from BLS under the Department of Labor. How did the shutdown impact the Department of Labor? If you just look at the agency, DOL, they had about 75% of their staff, of their workforce, they were furloughed, meaning they were at the house. If you look at BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they had probably around 90 to 95% furloughed. They were not in the office. They were not coming to work. They were not doing any work. They weren't working on any of this data. And why is that? I think that's a question you have to ask yourself. Why is nobody working on the data? Maybe it's because the numbers are not good. They're poor numbers. Look at the last report that came out, the report in August. August numbers came out in September. You had near 0% job growth. Do you think that's gotten better during the shutdown? You think it's better? You know what's definitely not better is the number for government jobs. Government jobs, they lump them all in. So they take local, state, and federal, and they have one number. That total number is going to be down. If the report would come out, that number would be way down. And that's the goal, so they shouldn't be that concerned about it. The reason it impacts state and local government is oftentimes you have federal dollars flowing into the lower levels of government, and they can actually create jobs with that money. A lot of that's not happening anymore. This is a big issue for a lot of people because what was the number one concern on people's mind when they voted last November? The number one issue across the country was the economy. It wasn't immigration. You could tie immigration into the economy and make a case for it, but it wasn't that. It wasn't anything else. The number one issue was the economy. So this jobs report, it's really important. And that also leads us to start discussing inflation. What's going on with inflation? Inflation is increasing. It was just 2.5% recently, and now we're hearing it's probably around 3%, if not higher. You can tell people all day long until you're blue in the face that Thanksgiving dinner is going to be a lot cheaper this year, 25% cheaper. But when you go into the grocery store, all of us at some point in time, we walk into a grocery store. I don't know if it's a Safeway, if it's a Piggly Wiggly, depending on where you're at, you can see the sticker price. You know how much a turkey is. Those turkeys are getting expensive. Not just that, but it's the pumpkin pies. You ever had a pumpkin pie for Thanksgiving? Those pumpkin pies are getting expensive. Whether you're making them from scratch or you're buying them pre-made, I don't know how you do it over there, but it's getting expensive. Everything is getting more and more expensive. And you know what will not help? What will not help are these $2,000 checks we've been talking about. How do you get prices down? You don't get prices down by injecting the economy with more money. You get prices down by increasing supply. That means you got to have more turkeys. You got to start raising more turkeys in order to have turkey prices come down. Same thing with pumpkins. You need to start growing some pumpkins, more pumpkin patches in order to get the price of pumpkins down. $2,000 checks is what, the president's talking about right now. What that is, that's very similar to a certain extent on what happened during COVID with the stimulus checks. Now, everybody was happy to receive them, but the aftermath of that was crazy high inflation. What I heard recently is these checks will not be for everyone. First, it's not really confirmed yet. If it does go through, it looks like there's going to be an income cap. So anybody making over $100,000 a year, I don't know if it's for a single individual or if it's for the entire family, but if you're making over $100,000 a year, then you wouldn't be eligible for the check. But we'll see if the check even goes through. Now, allegedly, we're all supposed to still get the September report. That hasn't come out yet. All we have is the August report. So we're supposed to get the September jobs report, and we'll see how that goes, right? Because if the numbers reflect too poorly, that individual could get fired. We saw, what was it, in August? Just several months ago. The main person that was in charge for putting out the report, the jobs report, she lost her job because the accusation was they were fake numbers. The numbers were not real, and it was this Democrat conspiracy to try to make the administration look bad. But then, once she was fired, the very next report, the numbers were pretty much the same. So it looks like those numbers were not faked after all, but she still lost her job. So we're going to have to keep our eye on that. Now, what this does, it leaves the Federal Reserve flying blind for their December meeting. The Federal Reserve usually looks at that report. They use that report to make decisions about raising or dropping interest rates. So they're not going to have that key piece of data. They're going to have to rely on other sources of data to make that decision. That's not going to be too good. I really don't understand how the Department of Labor did not fight to keep more of their workforce from being furloughed. Why not categorize these individuals as accepted federal employees or essential federal employees and make sure the data still comes out? Why didn't you do that? There's so many people that during the shutdown, they had to come to work. And it was for, in a lot of cases, it was for really bizarre, weird reasons. Like, why am I coming to work? Nothing that I'm doing is safeguarding life or government property, but they're still making me come into work. So if it's broad, if it is the discretion of the agency, if it's a broad category on who you're able to furlough and who comes into work, why did they send the employees that work on the data to the house? It doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, this leaves us in a very similar situation that we've been seeing time and time throughout the year. We're in a position where, once again, there's very little transparency, which erodes trust and confidence. A lot of it's already been eroded throughout the course of 2025, but this continues that. People want to know. People want you to be transparent even when the information is bad. It doesn't reflect good on the administration. It doesn't reflect good on anybody. People still want to know. And I think that individuals are so concerned about their reputation that they do not want to let negative information come out. And in another surprising interview that we heard from the president recently, we heard President Trump talk about the H-1B visas in a very positive light, admitting that, yes, we do need to have foreign people come here to work. Now, this goes against the very fabric of the MAGA movement. It's all about creating U.S. jobs, strengthening the U.S. economy by employing Americans. But now there's a realization happening that we might not have all the necessary skills in this country to fill critical jobs. You have to go to Asia. You have to go to India sometimes because people are just not trained on it. And he used the example of you can't just take people off an unemployment line and say, I'm going to put you in a factory and you're going to be making missiles. Meaning you can't just teach somebody these skills quickly. Sometimes you have to go overseas and bring the talent into the country. And another way that you can look at this is if you take talented and skilled engineers from China or India, that means there's less of that talent that China can use. So it's kind of like a brain drain, but from another country. And the end result is it strengthens our country. And the reality is immigration is a very important part of our economy. And a lot of people don't like to hear this. But if you got rid of all immigration, let's say you just lock this country down and you accept 0 immigrants, we will have a population decline. 2025, or let's say next year, 2026 would be a population decline. And you could be saying, well, what's wrong with that? We got too many people as it is. Depending on where depending on where you live, you could have that mindset. It's a huge problem for the economy because it's less people to buy goods and services. Everybody would be doing less business. Businesses would not be growing because you need the population to continue to increase in order for these businesses to continue to be profitable. Or they could be at the same level of profit and then they slowly start to go down and down. So you need immigration. We're not having enough babies. We're just not having. We're not even at the replacement rate. So Immigration is important for that reason, and you can have people come into this country if you create, a solid legal way that's dependable. There's nothing wrong with that. We should encourage that. We should want that for the country. Now, talking about jobs, we have less and less people applying to federal jobs, to government jobs. Now, this could be a no-brainer. Like, of course, why would they be applying? There's been a huge campaign to push workers out. That's true. But some federal agencies are experiencing 40 to 50% declines when it comes to applications. And then you have other agencies that are doing okay. So if you want to know who is hurting the most when it comes to receiving applications for jobs, if you want to know that information, I want you to check this video out next. Stay updated by signing up to the free newsletter down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.